Ladies and gentlemen, unmute your microphone. How you doing? This is the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident fanalist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_daddy. All right, well, we got some news and notes that are building up. I'm going to try to hold off on these until we get through our little series here. If you're new here, welcome. Whenever I do the podcast, this is a me problem. I always assume it's the exact same people every single time. I never account for the fact that sometimes people don't listen and new people come in and all that kind of stuff. It's a me problem. Anywho, if you are new or if you missed yesterday's podcast, I would encourage you to go back and listen to that first. Essentially, what we're trying to do here, my initial goal was just for fun, let's do something light. Let's do a little mock draft. Well, mock drafts don't take very long. Plus, 95% of Packer fans really don't, that's my guess. It's maybe not quite that much, but it's a lot. Don't care about the NFL draft. I would say probably like almost 50% don't care until we get to like March. So it's my goal to make the draft more fun and entertaining, and we're slowly going to be throwing little jabs in there to try to get you hooked. But I kind of thought what we could do is use this as an opportunity to kind of reframe our thinking of players based on having like a 2027 mindset. That is to say, 2026 ends. Now we start turning to 2027. What does it look like? Because things change quickly. You start looking at guys' contracts and things, and suddenly it's like, oh, shoot, this guy, might have a year. This guy might this or that or whatever. So kind of looking at it from that standpoint to understand not necessarily our 2026 needs, but beyond 2026, what are we looking like? And then, you take that information to say, maybe at the end of today, depending on how quickly we get through this, these are our list of needs. Therefore, let's do a little quick 7-round mock draft, which isn't really 7 because we don't have a first-round pick. So anywho, yesterday we went through the offense, kind of had a little bit more of a long-term look at things. Today I want to do the same thing, but with the defense. And, I guess we could take a quick peek at special teams, but it's not really going to matter. We kind of know where we're at with Smack. That's going to be a relatively long-term investment because we just got him. And our punter he's locked in. So doing what we usually do, working from the inside out, we'll start looking at the defensive tackle position. And right away we've got questions because, as we know, Devante Wyatt is playing for a contract. He is a undrafted free agent starting next year. 2026 right now is his fifth-year option. He was granted that, and this is his fifth year, so they have to do something. The assumption is he's going to get a contract prior to the start of the year. For me personally, I'd put that higher than 50%, but not a ton higher than 50% that actually ends up happening. It's been mixed results with Wyatt. I don't think he's ever really hit the ceiling of what they were hoping for from a first-round pick. I believe the pass rush is there, although I don't know that we've ever really heard from the team how they feel. And I will say, and this was a while ago, I don't even remember the name of the coach at the time, but our defensive tackle coach or whatever, the defensive line coach, whatever his title was, he really, I don't know if you remember, this might have been 2, maybe 3 years ago. Yeah, probably at least, I would say 3 to 4 years ago, his rookie or second year. He just really did not have a lot of positive things to say about Wyatt. Now, his general disposition was, different coaches answer things differently. Some coaches are much more positive. Some are just like, yeah, we'll see. But that coach, I never got, let me put it this way. I don't think I've ever heard anybody on this team praise Wyatt. It had to have happened at some point. But I'm not talking about like a reporter says, how's Wyatt doing? And they say he's doing good. I'm not talking about that because that's stupid. That's pretty much everybody. I'm talking about kind of like impromptu, or when asked that question, they go above and beyond just sort of the general, he's doing great or we're happy to have him or whatever the case. Have we ever heard a strong, solid pronouncement of this is the guy we can trust on the inside? We love his versatility. We can use him this way, that way. I've never heard anything. I feel like I've not heard them even talk about Wyatt. So when I say things like, I feel one way, but I think the team feels another way. I genuinely don't know how the team feels, but I do get kind of a vibe from the team that maybe they're not super high, which doesn't say a ton because, for myself and the fan base, I feel like I'm higher on Wyatt than the fan base and probably the team, but I don't know where that puts everybody. It's really, I guess we'll see. If he gets a contract, then it's more or less settled, and we'll have to look at the numbers to see how much they believe in him. And that'll pretty much tell us everything in terms of what his value is, what his market value is, or whatever. But the bottom line is if they don't come to a contract, that is kind of the team saying, we'll see. It's tough to say because I'm sure there are some kind of contracts going on. And if they don't come to a contract, it's not necessarily that the Packers didn't want to give him one. It's just that Wyatt feels like he's deserving of a bigger contract than the Packers do. And so you get to the point where this is just the situation where it's going to come to that. So at best, it'll tell us either the Packers didn't want to give him a contract and wanted to wait, or they just were very far apart on a contract and couldn't come to terms. And we'll probably hear some of that. But similarly, I don't know that we've heard anything about, they're working on a contract. The Packers and his agent are working. It's like the guy doesn't exist. They don't talk about him. He's a first-round pick that I think is when healthy, a very good pass rusher, obviously appallingly bad run defender. But it is very weird how little we hear about Wyatt compared to other players. We hear more about Van Ness. Obviously, Rashawn we heard a ton about. Quay, who was the first-round pick that was taken with him and is gone now. I feel like we heard more about Quay. And they talked relatively positively about Quay, which, annoyed me because I don't think any of us really liked him all that much. In terms, he had flashes. But yeah, they were very open in talking about like, oh, he does a great job with this or that. We were, all this nonsense. Nothing about Wyatt, though. Freaking crickets. But he is the guy that got the fifth-year option, and Quay didn't. Now, that's, positionally a different story, but still, it's worth mentioning. Anywho, the bottom line is we are in a bit of a tentative situation on the defensive. Well, let's just leave it at the interior. We'll get to the edge. But if you look at it, Carl Brooks is in the final year of his deal. Devante Wyatt's in the final year of his deal. Jonathan Ford is in the final year of his deal. And for what it's worth, Jordan Riley and Jaden Crumedy are also in the final years of their deal. Don't know how much that matters. Similarly, Hargrave and Stackhouse are 2 years out from, being done. And Hargrave may be sort of a 1 year thing. I'll look at that in a minute. So the point is, we just don't have a lot of guys that anchor that interior, which has to push them toward getting Wyatt locked up. Now, the other issue with Wyatt is that he's already 28. We drafted him as an older player. We drafted him at 24 years old. This is his fifth-year option, so he's 28, meaning the first year of his extension, he's going to be a 29-year-old player. This is the problem, by the way, with drafting, one of the problems with drafting older players. Imagine if he was a 25-year-old first-round pick. If you give him a fifth-year option, they're 30. 30 years old that first year of their extension. Who wants to do that, least of all the Packers? So this is going to be part of the issue that even if you give him an extension, a third year is basically off the table. That's never going to happen. That they're going to give him his third contract at, 29, 30, 31. If it's a 4-year deal, he's going to be like 32 years old. There's no way. So this is almost like his like an early third contract for the guy. And he has to know. It's tough to figure out how you want to deal with it. Do you want a longer-term contract? I guess if it's a mega one, you get your one big one and you freaking ride it out and retire. Otherwise, you hope for maybe a shorter contract, try to get like a mega one at 30, 31. It's a weird situation. It's weird, too, because, you think about him as being a younger guy. He's just coming off his rookie contract, but he's about the same age as Elton. Elton was, 29 years old? He's 29 years old. He's got injury problems. He's not exactly where he was, and the Packers said, c'est la vie. Devante Wyatt's 28 years old. He's coming off injuries. I don't know that it's so easy as to say, well, yeah, he's a young, talented guy, lock him up. No, he's not. He's pushing 30. So again, if it's me, yes, we're trying to lock him up. He's not getting anywhere near a mega contract. I don't think he's earned that. I'd pay him a comfortable contract and one that we can get out of in a handful of years here. By the time he hits 30 would be probably the latest I'd want to have any kind of real serious commitment to him. And if he can stay healthy and stay dominant, sure, we can talk about maybe bumping up that, or more than likely just letting him ride out the last couple of years of that contract. But again, if you let Wyatt walk, you've got Hargrave maybe for one more year. You've got Brooks and Ford you're probably going to have to pay to keep around. I mean, you just don't have anything. Yes, we have Chris McClellan. That's the one saving grace, but we don't know what he provides. Hopefully he's a stud. He's 23 years old. That would be fantastic if we can get him. He's slightly older, but he's not going to get a fifth-year option. So he'd be what, 24, 25, like 26 when he gets. That's perfectly fine. Or 27. No, 26, 23, 24, 25, 20. He'd be 26. So that's kind of the Wyatt situation. Again, I would lean toward he's going to get some kind of a contract. If for no other reason, we need to lock this down. Now, the positive side of this is you give him a contract, you got Wyatt long-term, and you have McClellan long-term, and we've got Hargrave for this year and probably next year. If we need that. That's solid. Again, conversely, you don't have Wyatt. We don't know what McClellan is, and we maybe have Hargrave. Maybe not. Either way, he's on his way. He's 34 years old. So it just provides so much more stability. But outside of that, again, Hargrave is obviously short-term. He's on the way out. Carl Brooks, I'm assuming they're going to give him a very small contract to stay. Probably not this prior to. I would guess this would be after this year. But the reason I say that is because we had Brooks and Wooden. They already let Wooden go. It's kind of like a Romeo thing where, it's either Romeo or the other guys. One stays, one. It's not exactly like that, but similar to. So Wooden's the guy we didn't invest in. Brooks will be the guy we probably do invest in. Not necessarily because he's great, but just because that's the one we picked. So he's 26. He'll be 27. He'll probably get, I don't know if it'd be like a 1 year or a very small contract to keep him around. So we'll have Wyatt. We'll have Brooks. I don't know about Jonathan Ford. Jonathan Ford is also 28. I don't see the need for him. We have Stackhouse, who's 24. We have McClellan, that I think is going to be more of a run defender. We have other guys that can kind of handle that. And so I don't really see Ford sticking around. And then, of course, we have Warren Brinson. We'll see what he provides. We got him in the draft. He didn't do much to inspire confidence, kind of like Barron Sorrell, to be honest. But he's got time to kind of prove he can be that guy. We'll see. But we'll have Brinson. I think we'll have Brooks. And I think we'll have Wyatt and McClellan. And that'll be sort of the, let's call it short-term, long-term. You know what I mean? Like for the foreseeable future, everything's fine. Hargrave, maybe one more year. But I see Wyatt genuinely as a pretty important pivot in terms of how I feel moving forward. Regardless, I wouldn't mind investing in it. Now, if we sign Wyatt and McClellan looks like a stud, and we keep Brooks and Brinson, seems serviceable, and maybe Stackhouse is serviceable, then we really don't need to screw with it. I mean, it becomes kind of like wide receiver or any of the other positions where, sure, if there's a good player, just pull the trigger. It is what it is. Best player available and all that, but it's not really an immediate need. But again, that's the pivot point. And if they don't pay Wyatt, now I'm looking at it going again, Brooks, Wyatt, Ford, Riley, all in the final year. Stackhouse, Hargrave, last couple of years. Brinson and McClellan haven't shown anything. It becomes a very pressing need. So again, that's kind of where I'm at with that. Okay, we're at about 15 minutes. Let's take a break. We got edge, linebacker, safety, corner. We'll be right back. So edge is a little bit different than defensive tackle, but similar in other ways. So I say it's different because we're pretty well locked up here. I'm going to assume Van Ness is going to end up getting a contract. They've already exercised his fifth-year option that was determined a couple months ago. So I would assume I mean, it's possible they give him a contract now, as in, prior to this year, but I don't see any real reason to do that. Similar to Wyatt, let's let him play out this year. 2027, he's very unlikely to play on that $13.7 million contract. They're going to offer him an extension next year, would be my assumption. So 2027 is the final year for him. So 1 year from now, we'll be talking about a Van Ness extension. How big that is going to be determined based on how he plays. And the bad news here, sorry about my voice. I don't know what's going on here. Too much talky today. Mostly just been talking to the robot through typing, so I don't know why my voice is going. But anywho, I always thought it was weird when I'd hear people talk about like, oh, my voice isn't strong, like it's too much talking, and I lose my, like, what are you talking about? That's not a thing. Apparently it's a thing. I don't know, maybe just when you get older or something. I don't know. I don't talk much. The only words I say are being ridiculous with my kids, saying goofy nonsense, and then doing the podcast. And this is the first podcast I've done today, now that I think about it. I just did the 2 AI podcasts, so I don't know what my problem is. Anywho, so Van Ness, for all intents and purposes, is locked up. Micah is locked up. Barron Sorrell, Colin Oliver, Denai Dennis Sutton, all essentially locked up. That leaves us with Brenton Cox, who I would love to pay. This is the final year of his deal. He is a free agent after this year. I don't know that we will. This, again, comes in part with one of those where I'm at compared to where the team's at. I never really know. It's just off vibes. This is one of the areas where I vibe it because that's the best I have. I like Brenton Cox. I didn't initially. I shouldn't say I didn't. I was just very skeptical that he could really do anything. I know a lot of Packer fans were very high on him, and I was kind of we'll see. And I've been very impressed with what he's done. Now, again, with that said, the age isn't really a problem. I think the problem is going to come from, we have Parsons, Sorrell, Oliver, Sutton, Van Ness. And almost guaranteed Gutekunst is going to draft another edge rusher next year at some point. I mean, it's one of those shockingly valuable positions that you just keep swinging at. And I don't mean to not mention Mr. Niall Kelly here, but, whatever. He's locked up long-term for whatever that's worth. But we have Brenton Cox and Aaron Mosby, and I like Mosby as well. I would say Brenton Cox has a better chance than Mosby does. Mosby is 27. He's a year older, and I think he's a little further down the depth chart. I don't know. Maybe Brenton Cox gets that sort of 1-year continuation deal just to kind of bolster the depth a little bit. But again, we've got 5 solid in front of him, including Micah, who is going to get $1 billion. And it's one of those, kind of like I said, with wide receiver. If we have an elite, or tight end in this case, if we have an elite number 1, I'm struggling here. If we have an elite number 1, their intensity at finding that number 2 is very low. So how much money are they willing to offer Brenton Cox compared to what he can maybe get if he hits the open market is also the other calculus here. I'm hopeful that they come to Brenton Cox and Aaron Mosby and just say, here's sort of a minimum-ish deal. Will you take it? And they say yes. I would love that because at that point, I think we have a fantastic, maybe that's an exaggeration. We'll see. I think it's important to have a 3 and a 4. We'll see what that looks like. I'm confident that if we do have Cox, Mosby, as well as Oliver, Sorrell, and Sutton, somebody's going to emerge. And if anybody can overcome Brenton Cox, because Brenton Cox, if you tell me he's our number 4, I'm going to feel pretty good about that. I like Brenton Cox as a number 4 edge rusher. So if it's Sorrell, if it's Sutton, if it's whatever, or if Cox ends up being 5, even better. But the point is, if we can just get one guy to be better than Brenton Cox, I would be very happy with what we have. And I'd be borderline surprised, as much as I'm a skeptic about anybody emerging, given the amount of people, I would be surprised if nobody rises to that level. So the point is, if we do bring back Brenton Cox, I feel like we're going to end up having a great roster, partially because I'm very high on Van Ness compared to where everybody else is at. And I think the Micah Parsons thing is short term, and I want to talk about this again. Not today is one of the things that I just was like, we need to have this conversation about Micah, a positive conversation. But I think the injury has really dampened everybody's opinion. It feels like, screw it, or whatever. I guess we got Van Ness and a busted up Parsons and a mediocre pass rush. Maybe Parsons doesn't come back 100%, but we're talking about many, many years, hopefully. He's 27. So we're talking about year 27, 28, 29, 30, probably as a freak, 30, 31. We might have 6 years of this unbelievably elite guy that can be that Reggie White to help get us over the hump and get us a Super Bowl. That's what Micah Parsons is. And I don't want us to lose sight of that because he might miss, 6 weeks or 8 weeks instead of 6 or 6 instead of 4 or whatever. Screw that, right? It sucks, but this guy's going to come back. He's going to freaking dominate. He is an absolute monster, and I don't want to lose sight of that. What are we talking about here? So the bottom line, I guess, again, for the 2027 purposes, this year, let's say, has ended. We turn the corner. What are we looking at? Parsons, Sorrell, Oliver, Sutton, all locked up. Van Ness will be locked up pending some kind of catastrophe. There's always the catastrophe option, but as of right now, I have no reason to believe that. That being said, the only question is going to be, what is Van Ness going to cost us? Which is going to upset some people, probably, unless he completely breaks out.
Person backdoor.
Which can only mean sacks, obviously. He has to have a lot of sacks, or otherwise he's useless. This is not my argument, that everybody else's. But how much is he going to cost us? / should we sign him? But that's going to be a stupid argument because we will. And then what's going to happen with Cox and Mosby? But I think regardless, let's say for draft purposes, and there's always free agency, there's always things we could add there. That's possible. I don't see this being a major need for us going into the 2027 NFL draft. If anything, again, worst case scenario, the pass rush struggled because Micah didn't come back for a long time. Van Ness does not appear to be whatever, and we just didn't get it from Sorrell and Sutton, who are the main guys. I hate to rule out Colin Oliver because I think, especially given the defensive coordinator we have now, I have more faith in Oliver than I did before, and it's not necessarily a better thing. It's just that we've seen not Halfley, Gannon. We've seen Gannon use these really small pass rushers in very positive ways. So I'm just a little bit more excited to see how he uses Colin Oliver. But unless, again, there is just this massive, we get nothing from anybody, I don't see that really being a need, especially looking right now.
Person backdoor.
Thank you. Looking from 2025 into 2026, I'm not going to assume that. So I think for our purposes, there's really no reason to assume edge is going to be a big need going forward. Linebacker is a very, very different issue. I think there's almost no chance that we aren't saying linebacker is somewhat of a need. So Edgerrin Cooper is also about to get paid. So let's see, I'm just going to throw this out there. There may be some surprise contracts that we just haven't even considered because there are several next year. So here, let me just run through real quick the amount of people that next year are going to be looking for a contract. And it would make sense for the Packers to pay them this year so that we don't have to screw with that. So it's a question of which of these guys do we pay now compared to later, right? So Van Ness, Hargrave is probably not going to be much. Jacobs, again, as I said, probably gone. Jordan Morgan, going to be looking for a contract. I said Van Ness, Edgerrin Cooper, Javon Bullard, Evan Williams, Xavier McKinney, Oladapo, Benjamin St. Juste, Daniel Whalen. I mean, can you imagine we're going to give, let's just say, Van Ness and Cooper and Williams, Bullard, and McKinney contracts? McKinney ain't going anywhere. He's 27. He ain't going anywhere. He's as young as half of us as our roster. That's a lot of contracts, and that's a lot of big contracts. Van Ness getting a big boy contract. Cooper getting a big boy contract. Bullard, Williams, and McKinney all getting big boy contracts. Again, it would make sense. And this is why, now I'm starting to understand why, when you look at how much money they were freeing up, like the nonsense they did with Aaron Banks that just felt so unnecessary. Why do you need we already have a lot of money. Why do you need all this money? Look at all the big boy. And again, Jordan Morgan has a big boy contract. It also goes to show why Josh Jacobs probably not getting a big boy contract. It also, if we real quick, and I know I'm not really going position by position, we'll get back to that, but just on this point, it also helps to push back on the Keyshawn Nixon thing. The Packers are talking to every agent on this team, every player's agent on this entire team saying, we want money, we want money. This is all on top of Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave, Josh Wiley. Some of them are probably getting brushed off, but these are guys saying, hey, what about us? You got Wyatt, Jonathan Ford, Carl Brooks, McDuffie, Welch, Neiman, Mosby, Cox, Keyshawn, and Valentine all in the last years of their deals saying, hey, how about we work out a deal here? On top of that, you're looking at this absolute catastrophe of, again, just Van Ness, Cooper, Bullard, Williams, and McKinney. Just them. I'm not even including like Oladapo and Whalen or anything. Whelan? I cannot remember. I think it's Whelan. Because I thought it was Whalen before, and then I got told it was wrong. Whatever. It's funny because I just keep thinking, like, well, which one sounds Irish? And if you say either one with an Irish accent, they sound Irish. So this is worth keeping an eye on. And again, and I think there are so the rules on this would be more stringent, I believe, on the rookies. I don't think so. For Bullard, Williams, Cooper, and maybe Van Ness, I don't know how the fifth-year option works, but I don't think it really matters. You cannot extend them until the final, let's see, let me read this. 4-year contracts cannot be renegotiated or extended until after the last regular season game of the third contracted year, except as specifically allowed in Article 7. Whatever. We'll ignore that for now. So they can't start negotiating until after this year, which is their third year. Then that's when they start chomping at the bit. You know that doesn't apply to, though, is Xavier McKinney. He is not a rookie. So when I mentioned kind of like these sneaky contracts that could come up out of nowhere, I think Xavier McKinney would be one to keep an eye on. And again, this is mostly in the interest of spreading out the money. Now, we've got big contracts this year. We just paid Christian. We're about to pay Tucker. We might pay Wyatt. I don't know. But again, look at next year. Jordan Morgan might be getting a big boy contract. Van Ness is more than likely getting a big boy contract. Cooper might be at the top of the linebacker market. Bullard and Williams getting big boy contracts. Compared to this year, I would rather have, you probably want to put one of those guys, one more guy, on the this year contract compared to next year, especially since we have the money. I mean, I don't know how much money. I mean, I be hard to say because by the time you pay Tucker, what does it say we have here? It says we have $24 million. This is what I'm talking about. We have so much money right now. Now, I don't know, where does Watson land? So he lands at $10 million right now. So if he's at 10 with like a, I don't know, 24 million average, or it's really like 20, but what does that put Tucker at? I mean, just roughly. It might actually be relatively close, but let's call it 8. And that does drop us down quite a bit, doesn't it? Put us at 15 million in cap space. That wouldn't give us a ton of room. Still, I'm just saying, especially if we do Wyatt and Tucker, I think we're out of money. Because you don't ever drop this down to zero. You need money going into the season. So in case things happen, you got an emergency fund. I don't know. Let's see how it materializes. I think the Packers also need to see how things materialize. Either way, you have to account for Wyatt. You could say, let's do McKinney, and then that kind of waits on Wyatt. Okay, well, that just pushes, we're just swapping McKinney and Wyatt. It just creates the same problem where now we have Wyatt, Van Ness, Bullard, and Williams, with the off chance that Wyatt doesn't get paid at all, which maybe does push in that direction, at least in terms of, first of all, we're going to wait, and second of all, you're going to have to blow our socks off. In the meantime, we're paying McKinney now because we know that dude ain't going anywhere. That guy's got to stay. I'll be honest, man. I would probably go in that direction. McKinney he's the unspoken hero of this team. He is one of the best safeties in the entire NFL. Doesn't ever get talked about. When we talk about the Packers aren't up to snuff in the NFC North or whatever, people talk about Micah and Jordan isn't good enough. Like, first of all, you underrate all our receivers. You also completely discount we have one of the best safety duos in football, and McKinney might be the best safety in all of football. We just don't talk about that. That guy is one of the heart and soul players on this entire team. I would lean toward trying to get that guy extended right now. What is his contract at? That's the other question, because see, he's already at, that's the other thing. It's not a question of how much are we adding. It's a question of how much additional. I mean, we might, he's at right now 10 million. So we could offer him an extension, and it could possibly go down a little bit. If nothing else, maybe stay the same for this year. So we don't lose any freaking money on McKinney. That's going to be a freaking wash, dude. And Wyatt's at 13 million. So that's, I mean, yeah, 100%. I didn't even realize he was so high. You extend Wyatt, that number's coming down. Sorry for the lawnmower. You extend Wyatt, that number's coming down. You extend McKinney, that basically stays the same. Tucker's the one that's getting the big payday. Where is he at? He's at 4 million. So that comes up to 10. That costs us 6 million net, right? So we drop 6. We got to extend McKinney. Got to be done, folks. I think for me right now, the priority is Tucker Kraft. After Tucker Kraft, it's McKinney. After that, we talk to Wyatt, and we see where he's at as far as the market. And again, his number comes way down if we extend him. I don't know about way down, but it's going to come down if we extend Wyatt. Because he's on his 5th-year option, which is a lot of money. It's $13 million. So we would save money by extending him now. And you also save money long-term when you do it this year compared to next year in the long run. Because it's, well, whatever. The salary cap goes up every year, so there you go. Anywho, sorry, getting back to position by position, let's figure out linebacker here. That's an important note to keep an eye on, is all the money. Because we had that one. It's the one problem with having a lot of picks, and a lot of those picks hit. That was maybe Gutekunst's best year ever. We're looking at, Cooper, Williams, Bullard in that list, on top of, again, McKinney and Van Ness and all that stuff. But, all right, linebacker. What I started off by saying is it's almost impossible in my mind that we aren't talking about linebacker in some capacity. Reason being, Edgerrin Cooper's going to get paid. That dude's locked up. So the question then becomes, do we feel confident in having a second linebacker, or would it be cool to maybe find a better number 2? Our options are, number 1, Zaire Franklin. Zaire Franklin is today 30 years old. Next year, he's going to be in the final year of his deal at 31. That's not a long-term solution, so that's not feasible. Additionally, Isaiah McDuffie is in the final year of his deal this year. He'll be a free agent next year. Now, maybe we pay him and he ends up being the guy, but if we felt that way, why did we go get Zaire? You know what I mean? I don't think that they feel he's the guy. Now, they did pick him, but I as far as him compared to, I forget the other guy's name, who went back to Minnesota, but that was more of an age thing, I think. I think McDuffie is similar in my mind to like a Chris Brooks at running back. He's fine as your sort of number 3, as your backup or whatever. He's not your number 1. He's not your number 2. The question then becomes Tyron Hopper. And I have a problem with Tyron Hopper, and it's not that I don't like him. I do. The problem is we're trying to find a Zaire Franklin. We're trying to find a smash mouth tackling machine, and I don't think Tyron Hopper's built that way. I think he's more of an Edgerrin Cooper, Edgerrin Cooper light. He's more of a small, fast, athletic guy. Now, again, there's a role, and I think he stays on the team, although that would mean he's in that same draft class where he's going to have to get paid along with Edgerrin Cooper and everybody else, which makes it a little tentative. In fact, I bet he doesn't get paid next year. They're going to let him ride out his contract, and we'll see how it goes. But the point is he'll be there, but I don't think he fills that role of who is that tackling machine kind of guy. Christian Welch and Nick Neiman, number 1, are neither of which are the solutions, and number 2, they're also free agents next year. So if they get paid, so it's a question of McDuffie, Welch, Neiman. Of those 3 free agents, do we bring any back? And if so, who's coming back for what role? I don't think any of them are seriously going to replace Zaire Franklin. Now, Zaire Franklin's under contract next year, so ideally we let that ride out on his final year so we have a guy next year. But again, we don't have a long-term solution. The only other guy is TJ Quinn. So back to my point of long-term, who is Quay Walker? Who is Zaire Franklin? Who is that dude? Again, Quay, I think, filled the role fine. There's just no way in hell we're going to pay him the amount of money that he got. He was not worth that. For a number 2 linebacker that is just a freaking ogre that stands in the middle and smashes people, no offense to Zaire, I respect what he does, but you get what I'm saying. We just need a freaking meaty enforcer guy. In terms of the draft, just to give you an idea of why I'm being somewhat condescending, if you want an Edgerrin Cooper, you have to draft him early. If you want a Zaire Franklin, you can get those guys in the 4th, 5th round. Now, that is to say, if you go get one of those guys that's seen as just a tackling machine, but they're not very good in coverage and all that kind of stuff, and of course, everybody needs to do a little bit of everything. I get that. But I'm saying, if you're just looking for the tackling machine, those guys fall to the 4th round. Really good, physical, just smash you in the face enforcers will fall later on. So I think we're going to be looking at some of those guys in the draft. Okay, take a break. We got our DBs coming up after the break. We'll be right back. All right, let's wrap this up, folks. We already obviously did some of this because we were going through the whole spiel there. But one of the biggest and most obvious issues to point out, I would assume, is that corner is not going to be fixed by next year. In other words, we're still going to be looking at corner next year. There's a lot of caveats to that. We have to see how Cisse does. But I'm looking at a situation right now where Valentine, I like Valentine. I don't think the team does as much as I do. And he's in the final year. He's a free agent next year. Keyshawn Nixon, all the talks about he may sit out, blah, blah, blah. All signs, in my opinion, point to the Packers, if he does that, are going to ignore him and say, shut up and go do your job. I don't think he has any leverage. I think he sees the writing on the wall. His best option right now is to go ball out and hope to get some kind of a minimum bullcrap contract. So Nixon and Valentine are both free agents. Cisse is an unknown. St. Juste is a short-term solution. He's 29. He'll be 30 next year and in the final year of his deal. So, look, Keyshawn is also going to be 30 next year. So I don't think either of them are serious options. So, I don't know how they let Carrington go. I just don't see it. Even if they don't like him as much as I do, he's 25 years old. He's started. Plus, again, Nixon and St. Juste are not real options. Yes, there's Damani Jackson. We'll see what he can do. But I'm looking at this saying next year we have Cisse, and I'm hoping we're not saying, good Lord, that was terrible. But we have essentially Cisse and Valentine, and then, of course, Javon Bullard in the slot. I mean, that has to be our future. And if the Packers are comfortable with that, and it's going to be tough to say because it might be, we might be in a situation where Valentine, Bullard, and Keyshawn are playing the majority of snaps, and we don't get a chance to see Cisse, which would be obviously not great. There's also a chance that Cisse takes Valentine's seat, which isn't great either, for the prospect of Valentine being our future cornerbacks, considering we just benched him behind a guy that we have no intention of keeping in Keyshawn Nixon. And I don't see any scenario where Keyshawn is given the boot this year. I guess I shouldn't say I don't see any scenario. It's possible, but it's unlikely. And then I also don't see him being benched. I hope it happens. I hope that Cisse is so good and Valentine's so good. They're like, well, it is what it is. And it ends up being Cisse, Valentine, and Bullard as our corners. But I just really, really don't ever see that happening. So it's an odd situation where you're going to have Nixon, who's going to be asking for a contract, obviously, at 30 years old. Valentine, who sat on the bench, saying, hey, could I possibly start for you next year? And then Cisse, who maybe didn't even play, now we have to say, do we trust this guy to take over so that we can let Nixon go? Well, how can you trust him if he didn't play? So now you feel obligated to keep Nixon, even though it's such a stupid Again, the only right thing, you play Cisse and Valentine. You have to see if these can be your guys. You have to see. Otherwise, we're going to extend Keyshawn, and maybe, we'll let Valentine go, and we'll continue trying to build and figure out what we got. But I don't know how you bench one of the two guys that you need to see if they can play. And obviously you can rotate or whatever, but I don't know, man. Similar to linebacker, I guess I'm just in a position where in 2027 it seems unlikely that we aren't saying, I think we should just take another shot at it. If we end up with too many good corners, oh well. It's not like we're going to have a bunch of blue chippers, right? It's not like Valentine and Cisse and Bullard are all like top 5 guys. And now this is a wasted pick. But it's a tough situation. But I would say from where I'm sitting today, it's hard to see a specific scenario where we're saying we're 100% comfortable at corner. It's possible, but just based on the way that I see this playing out, pending some kind of an injury, I don't see it. And then there's safety. Look, McKinney has to stay. If they move on or trade McKinney, I will be pissed. There is no excusing that. He's 27 years old. He is phenomenal. He gets locked up. I would do it tomorrow. Evan Williams, likewise, next year will get paid. Almost no reason for that not to happen. I wouldn't put him in the blue chip category. I just think he's been a very solid safety pretty much since he got here. I mean, he took a jump and has continued to get better, but he is just extremely reliable in that role. I don't exactly know what we do with Oladapo. My assumption is he gets a very small contract to stay on the team, but I have no idea. And then we got a bunch of other guys that are they don't have any contracts coming up. Jonathan Baldwin, Jalen Simpson, Mark Perry, and Mervyn Kenyon. I don't know. But the bottom line is, pending some kind of horrific decision, safety should be fine. I don't really see any reason why we would be looking at safety as anything that's problematic. And then as far as special teams, go ahead. Thank you. I feel like she hasn't been doing that, and all of a sudden she's doing that again. I don't know what that's all about. That's interesting. Anywho, Trey Smack, not really worth discussing, even if he has a terrible year. I mean, I guess we could discuss it. At the very least, bringing someone in for competition. We're not going to draft somebody. That would be ridiculous. It's funny talking about Daniel Whelan, because it's like, didn't we just pay the guy? Yeah. But he keeps getting these little mini contracts. I think he's had 2 one-year contracts for the Packers. Then he got a 2-year contract with the Packers. So in 2026, we're already looking at next year is his final year. So nothing really massive, but he may get an extension next year. Given how many people are getting them, it's more likely we probably just let it ride out through 2027 and then reevaluate at 2028, which I would assume he'd still get a contract. But, again, in the interest of spreading this stuff out a little bit, wait for the conclusion of 2027, and then before he becomes a free agent, give him some kind of a contract in 28. But, yeah, I think that's pretty well locked up. Matt Orzich, I think there were questions before. There really haven't been questions for a while. He seems to be doing fine. So that's pretty well locked up. There's, I suppose, questions about Sky Moore, but, well, let me put it this way. I think there's a good chance we're talking about a specialist, because even if Sky Moore does well, the problem is no team likes paying these guys. They just really have a hard time paying kickers and any kind of special teams player, kicker, punter, whatever. If you're getting, like, God forbid, $3 million, the anxiety is just going crazy, and they just want to shave that extra $1 million or $2 million off and get some nobody. So I would say regardless, actually, I'll put it this way. The most likely scenario is Sky Moore is okay. He's not elite, and nobody really wants to pay him a premium to be a specialist anymore, and we're going to be looking at other options. Not because he was bad, but just, if we're just going to have a specialist, let's see if we can find another. The draft always has these guys, right? They had him, I forget who it was this past year, but he was some freak specialist that everybody wanted. There will be plenty more. So I'm guessing there are going to be guys that are seen as punt return, kick return specialist types. And whether the Packers are interested or not, as a fan base, we'll probably be talking about it. So, all right, I will leave it at that. That is the 2-day overview of the offense, defense. Tomorrow, again, it shouldn't take a whole day, so I don't know how to do it. Maybe we'll just start with a mock and then just kind of leave it at that. Just introduce a little bit some of the players. Maybe it won't be a mock. We can just, no, it should be a mock. Let's do a mock. It doesn't need to be a super in-depth thing. I promised a mock you shall get. So we'll figure it out. Anywho, y'all have a good rest of your day. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.